Today's question is, what's the most unfair thing you've ever seen?
Me and my sister both had braces and had to wear those rubber bands that fix your jaw or whatever. I wore my bands every single night, while my sister rarely wore them. When we had our dentist appointment, the dentist took a look at my teeth and then gave me a disappointed, "You haven't been wearing your bands, have you?" I tried to tell her I always wore them, but she obviously didn't believe me. Then my sister got in the chair, and our dentist said, "Wow, you've been wearing your bands." That was maybe 10 years ago. My teeth are still worse than my sister's. I hung out with a bunch of poor misfits in high school. We all wore hand-me-down clothes and qualified for free lunch at school and shit. Lots of single-parent families and government assistance. This one girl in my group complained more than anyone else about how her family was poor. She often didn't have a lunch, and so the other kids would all chip in and either give her money or share our own lunches. Two of the kids we hung out with were twin brothers. Their mom was raising them, plus their older brother, all on her own because their dad was incarcerated. He finally got out when we were teens and pretty much immediately ran off and refused to pay support too. Because of the circumstances, the boys started working to support their family really young, first doing odd jobs for folks and then getting real jobs as soon as they could. The two of them felt so sorry for this girl, they decided to surprise her for Christmas one year. They saved up what they could for months and bought her a brand new game system she'd been complaining about wanting. Meanwhile, she gave a few of us used games and books, obviously previously played/read by her, wrapped in tinfoil instead of gift wrap, and we all shrugged that off because of course she was poor. A couple weeks after that Christmas, the girl's parents decided to let her throw her first small party for her friends at their house. Her dad picked us all up in their brand new minivan, and then drove us to their brand new house. After we arrived, we got introduced to her new puppy, and then given the home tour which included 5 bedrooms and a pool. Also notable was the girl's bedroom, where her new game system sat alongside 2 other recent systems. I found out later that her dad was an attorney, and her mom was a medical assistant. Her parents' combined income was 3-4x what my family made in a year, much less our friends who had worked their asses off to buy her that game system. Her idea of being poor was based on her parents not buying her everything she wanted immediately. The reason she never had lunch money? She saved what her folks gave her to buy herself things instead, while mooching off kids who were on free lunch. The reason she always gave us used stuff as gifts? Because she would have her parents buy a bunch of stuff for her friends at holidays, then keep it for herself while giving us stuff she no longer wanted instead. I'll never forget the look on my friends' faces as they slowly realized that the person they'd worked to support out of sympathy was actually just a spoiled brat. ETA, RIP inbox, update by demand though. Afterward, we started gradually cutting her off. She flipped her shit and caused a bunch of drama with me, and at that point I dropped her. Other people continued to let her hang around, but throughout the next year, she continued to fuck them over. By the time we finished high school, she had no friends at all. She's now 32 and never did anything useful with her life. I look her up every couple years, and it seems like her parents are still supporting her while she tries to get strangers on the internet to GoFundMe her rent. Without success. One of the twins sadly died not long after high school. He had a chronic health issue and probably didn't get as much treatment as he should have. His brother is still around and still the nicest guy. He's doing okay, all things considered. I took care of a woman who had cancer and was in her end days. She was young, late 30s, and had 3 sons, ages 9, 11, and 18. Apparently, she had only just been diagnosed earlier that year. Earlier in the year, when her husband got the news that she had cancer, he was on his way home to comfort her and was killed in a car accident. So these boys lost both their parents in the span of about 10 months. This woman not only found out she was dying, but then was loaded with the grief of his death and the uncertainty of her children's futures. All of us nurses had to rotate care of her, as no one could leave that room and not be in tears. We didn't want to add to the boys' grief. Life is fucked sometimes. I was adopting my dog from animal control and I saw this guy come in asking about a couple of cats he dropped off the day before. He had changed his mind and was going to keep them. The shelter has a policy that they don't put down animals that have been surrendered until at least 3 days. I guess it gets really overcrowded or something. I'm not sure. Point is, he had 48 hours until that could happen to his cats. Anyway, he was explaining this to the front desk lady, and she's looking up records for him. She tells him both cats were already put down. OMG, the look on his face still hurts my heart today. It was this look of hurt, guilt, anger, and sadness, simply gut-wrenching, and he cried over those babies too. He was going on about how he had more time, and they said they wouldn't for 3 days. Absolutely was not fair to the animals or him. When I was in grade school, we had a final group assignment to design a community center, with my teacher promising a lobster dinner for the group that had the highest mark. I had a bit of a crush on my teacher and thought, hey, lobster dinner. My group busted their asses designing the hijinks after school community center, calling a long list of businesses to determine membership fees, cost of construction. We got hung up on a lot looking for price of building materials, community outreach programs, and a whole lot more. We even helped the special needs kid in our group write a jingle, and we got the highest mark. When it came time for our lobster dinner, my group stayed in the classroom during recess to enjoy the fruits of our labor. My teacher brings out our lobster, which was a loaf of bread with googly eyes and paper lobster claws stuck in the side. It was on that day I learned the true meaning of disappointment. A girl who lived down the street from me growing up died in a car crash. She was really young, hadn't even finished college yet. 2 or 3 years later, her younger sister, who my sister and I used to play with together, died the exact same way. The only one left is the middle child, their brother. I can tell it has absolutely crushed their family, and I just remember going to the funeral and thinking, why? Why did they have to live through this not once but twice? That much heartache has to be unbelievable, and it's incredibly unfair. The brother was always a little prick growing up, but man, I wish I could pull him aside now and tell him just how sorry I am that he has to live without his sisters, and that if he needs anything, not to hesitate to ask. But I really never knew him well, so he'd probably think that was weird. But I think of him and his family often. Update: I know a bunch of people were saying I should reach out. Looked him up on social media. Looks like he's actually doing really well. Looks very happy, has a girl now, and a good support system. So I feel a bit better. Mostly just wanted to know he was okay. My freshman year of college, I got to be extremely close with a girl who was a senior. We did everything together. At the time, I was heavily religious, and so was she. We went to the same cultish church and spent almost all of our waking hours together. She was my best friend and my duet partner when we lead worship at our university's Christian group. She was stubborn and beautiful, and she loved so deeply and truly. Just an all-around wonderful, intelligent girl. The summer after she graduated, I went through some serious personal crap, and I ended up walking away from church and religion. Because of this, we grew apart. I still saw her, and we were still friends, but the lack of proximity coupled with the loss of what had first bonded us strained things. About a year went by, and I was seeing her less and less. I missed her and our friendship. I reached out. She came over to my dorm, and we spent some time together. We made plans to go see Les Mis in theaters the next week. We never got to go. She'd been having back pain the doctors couldn't figure out, and that week she started having seizures and throwing up too. Because of these issues, she moved back in with her parents. She ended up diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I was never able to afford the trip to be with her when she was sick. I still feel so guilty for not just figuring it out. October will be 4 years since she passed, and I still miss her so much. I'm big on remembering people accurately and not pretending they were perfect just because they're gone. She wasn't perfect by any means, but she was closer than anyone else I've ever known. It was so unfair for someone like her to not only die young, but to suffer as horribly as she did. It wasn't fair that I wasn't there for her when she needed me most. The world is truly dimmer without her light. TLDR, my best friend from college was taken by cancer at 23. She was a fantastic individual. No one deserves to die like that, but she absolutely didn't. And this is the end of today's video. I hope you liked it, and don't forget to comment an anecdote or experience similar to the topic of the video. Leave your like, share if you liked the video, and lastly, don't forget to activate the little bell so you don't miss any of our daily videos. Bye-bye.